continuing the process of dealing with this particular what we think is an aberration in the law, what I believe is an aberration in the law.
I mean, you've got, in terms of New York and many other states right now across the country, of course, dealing with tremendous budget crises. Mm-hmm. To keep people in prison, it costs more than to go to the fanciest university in America.
$40,000 a year for individuals incarcerated in our prison, and treatment probably reduces that price to about $15,000.
So I would think there would be a tremendous impetus, if not just economically right now, in terms of closing these huge gaps where New York State, not to mention places like California, other places are talking about vast cuts in education and, you know, in the social network, in the legislation, in the programs in this country that keep people going, and yet continuing these laws that have been that the governor himself was arrested for protesting.
And that is absolutely true. However, and we have to recognize that there's still people who represent communities around this state who have concerns about loosening of the laws related to drug possession and drug use, and that is a real political reality, which we faced all the way from the back when nobody wanted to talk about dropping the rock or changing the drug laws. And it is a constant struggle, which, you know, I think both the Corrections Society and Drop the Rock and all of us have been engaged in over the years, changing opinions in the populace and also with elected officials has been a long and arduous task.
Give us the history of the drug laws. Why were the Rockefeller drug laws instituted in the 1970s?
It is said, there are two stories. We heard a different one more recently. It was said that essentially Governor Rockefeller was looking to run for national office.
This was Nelson
Nelson Rockefeller, and needed to shore up his conservative credentials. You know, Rockefeller was a much more of a liberal Republican than was the standard for the party around the country. And as he wanted to run for national office, it was advised that he needed to do this, and Rockefeller became the place where he staked out his conservative credentials. At the same time, Rockefeller started the Rockefeller drug program, which was a state-run rehabilitation service that was used around the country, where people were civilly committed to facilities and were provided with what we think was really a rudimentary attempt to control drug abuse. And he was said about the fact that there wasn't the kind of success in his program that was designed, and so therefore he turned to create these very harsh drug laws. And I think that comes because we've become, over the years, to understand better that substance abuse is a disease, and substance abuse, the fact that people will relapse in this process of coming to a cure is just one of the things that you must accept. And so essentially now the battle is to take the idea of substance abuse away from the sense of criminal justice violations to a disease that requires treatment, that requires a certain medical and therapeutic understanding if you're really to solve the problem that we're faced.
Do you think it's too cynical to ask if part of the lobby for not getting rid of, repealing the drug laws is that it's a jobs program, the prison system throughout this state, the upstate communities where the prison industry is so important?
In certain areas of our state, in certain senatorial districts particularly, there are numerous numbers of prisons, and so prison population in those districts are clearly political issues. And so I don't think it's cynical to say that those who represent those districts are going to look at any attempt to reduce the prison population with suspicion and or political dread. We, in fact, engaged in a battle. The governor has proposed closing some upstate camps because the prison population in the last 10 years has dropped from some 70 plus down to 60 and hopefully down into 50,000 numbers, there's a huge resistance, and was last year, to closing any of the camps, either smaller facilities upstate, because of the loss of jobs and the potential, in fact, some of the towns associated with these camps would be threatened to potentially go out of existence. And so I don't think that that's, there's no cynicism in understanding a political reality, and that is a political reality.
Have you had much support from the new Senator Gillibrand, who does come from upstate? Is she supportive of dropping the Rockefeller laws?
I do not believe that the senator has weighed in on this subject that I'm aware of.
Kirk James, when you were imprisoned, where were you held?
I was held in numerous facilities. There's not a prison for nonviolent offenders. They actually throw you into, because I had 7 years to life, usually you start out, if you have a sentence more than 6 years, you start out in a maximum security prison. So even as a first-time offender, I was sent to a maximum security prison, Coxsackie.
This is all upstate?
All upstate.
One prison after another?
Upstate, definitely. They're really, I mean, I think there are 1 or 2 prisons in New York City, like you pointed out. I mean, prisons definitely subsidize the upstate economy, unfortunately, so they're all upstate, even though the majority of people are from New York City that are incarcerated.
Caitlin Dunkley.
And in fact, the people who are incarcerated in upstate communities are actually counted as residents of those districts, not as residents of the districts in New York City where the majority of our state's prisoners come from. And those residents allow upstate senators, in particular Republican senators, to maintain the minimum number of people that they need in their districts to have a state senate district.
Wait. This is a very important point to end on here. You're talking about a largely minority community from New York City. Maybe Kirk or Caitlin, you can tell us what the numbers are.
90% of people who are incarcerated are people of color under Rockefeller, and over 60% are people from the 5 boroughs.
And when they are imprisoned upstate, they count as residents.
Under the census.
Upstate. Can't vote, but count as residents upstate.
Right. And not only does that maintain the minimum numbers that the upstate legislators need in their district to maintain their district, but it also channels anti-poverty money from the federal government into upstate districts where that money should be going to where the people who are incarcerated came from.
Is that unusual to count them as residents of the prisons that they are in?
It's not unusual. It happens in many states across the nation.
We're going to leave it there. We will follow the vote tomorrow. I want to thank you, Caitlin Dunkley, for joining us, coordinator of the Correctional Association's Drop the Rock campaign. Kirk James, thank you for being with us. He served 9 years under the Rockefeller drug laws, now a social justice activist to Drop the Rock. And Assemblymember Jeff Aubrey from Queens is the co-sponsor of the legislation that will be voted on in the New York State Assembly. Not to repeal the laws right now, but to reform them. This is Democracy Now! We'll go national, then global in the next segment. We'll look at the disparity in drug sentencing, and we'll look at the international implications of drug laws in this country. Stay with us.
So how come when I look upon these cells I see just us? Must trust in God like the dollar bill. The U.S. Mint keeps our eyes tent of Capitol Hill like Amityville. I'm gonna haunt that house till this racially biased penalty is denounced and announced. All the travesties to man, and up in my mail comes the deeds to our land. The revolution is broadcasted in stereo, plus the welfare poets playing resistance on the radio.
Most of us cannot afford to hire an attorney. I'm poor, so there's a higher chance that they gon' murder me. The murder rates are low in states without the penalty. Juveniles and mentally ill on the penalty. The penalty is racist. That's the penalty. We can't keep justifying murder as a remedy. We coming for you pronto. This land is nacho. We riding horses wearing ponchos. Y es por eso que yo canto. Pa' la mujer encarcelada y enterrada. 55 hay, 55 morirán. And what about the fact que mueren muchos inocentes? I see the faces on death row y esas caras son mi gente. Thou shalt not kill or an eye for an eye. George Bush as governor, let everyone fry. Not revenge when you angry, the natural reaction. But you only really heal through love and compassion.
Yo, I guess I bar Shem, claiming it's not God's plan. Is that the same plan to give it a right to kill a man? Is this freedom and justice, man, a crime to overstand? My people's walking toward free the land. Cause when we get executed, never see no headlines, no news flash or even like a picket sign. Geraldo don't come into your courtroom, and Larry King don't put us on the airways. But best believe we got the #1 percentage on death row. The whole prison system in general. And what's the color of the people's individual? The facts of slavery is just residual. We stay trooping like gorillas in the mist. We live in the razor clenched fist and the bliss. Focus as we reasoning.
And one way is just a redeeming form of justice.
So how come when I look upon these